Fight Club and the birth of Tyler Durden. The main quote I'd like you to pay attention to is that it's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. This film is about a man who gave up everything in his life to free his inner desires, but he did not know what he was really losing. So the synopsis of the movie Fight Club is based on an unnamed man who I'll refer to as a narrator. He lives in a relatively sad, mundane city and works in an unnamed car company. He's experiencing depression and insomnia and overall discontentment with his life. So by posing as a sufferer of testicular cancer and other afflictions in support groups, this cured his insomnia. It allowed him to relieve his emotions and begin sleeping again. But when another faker joins, he is once again depressed and sleepless. On his way home from a business trip, he encounters a man named Tyler Durden, who very much intrigues him. But when he returns to his apartment, he finds that it's all blown up, and he calls Tyler out for drinks. After drinks, they get in a fight behind the bar in a way that they refer to as willing in a very friendly manner, as far as it can go as a fist fight. So, after a couple weeks of returning and doing this again, the narrator gains an attraction of a crowd of followers who wanted to join the fight, which eventually became the Fight Club. Throughout the course of this movie, the club grows, and Tyler even goes out and propagates clubs across the country. When Tyler's actions get out of hand, the narrator steps in and tries to keep Tyler from indulging in more destruction. However, the pieces begin to fall together when Tyler's Fight Club followers begin to recognize the narrator as Tyler, their leader. The narrator becomes distraught to find out that Tyler was his alternate personality the whole time, and that it was far too late to undo the damage that Tyler, or really himself, had done. The narrator is very emotionally unstable, very dissatisfied with his commercializing of society, he's very impulsive, depressed, apathetic, and yet organized. This is what brings us to the clinical case of the narrator. He has as a diagnosis of what's called dissociative identity disorder. This is characterized by the presence of two or more distinct personality identities. Each may have their own unique name, personal history, and their own characteristics. The DSM-5 categorizes this as a dissociative disorder. A main way we can see that this is what he has is that he creates an alternate personality called Tyler Durden. The movie shows him as with hyper-opposite differences. Tyler is essentially the id of the narrator. It allows him to experience his inner desires and impulses while thinking he himself is not actually responsible for them. The movie also drops hints that Tyler works at night while the narrator works in the day, and all his restlessness that occurs is because he only gets an hour sleep a night switching between his alternate personalities. So some more clinical symptoms that he experiences are memory loss or dissociative amnesia of certain time periods and events. For example, Tyler came up with what was called Project Mayhem, which is a very organized and destructive event, but the narrator did not recall doing this. He also did not remember going around the country and propagating new fight clubs. There's also, oh yes, and his perception of people and things around him were very distorted and unreal, which is called derealization. Some of his quotes exemplify this in that he said, "It's not clear if reality slipped into my dream or if my dream is slopping over into reality." He feels as though life is not real, he doesn't understand the things that's going on around him, he just doesn't have a desire to care for them at all. Some potentially missing symptoms is that he didn't have very specific traumatic events that triggered the cause of his new personality. It was more of developing over time, and he slowly created Tyler. He also has other mental health problems such as depression and anxiety. So some key differences to begin the personality analysis is to note that the narrator is a polar opposite of Tyler Durden, and they have very, very large differences between each other. For example, the narrator is introverted, seldom depressed, while Tyler Durden is extroverted, energetic, and charismatic. For the personality analysis, we will focus on the narrator. There are 5 big traits that exemplify his overall personality. To begin with, his openness was low. On the outside it was no, but in a way it was yes. So before Tyler came along, he admitted to being the same as everyone else and not trying anything new. He he like showed this through IKEA and how he got the same exact things as everyone else, and how he was in a rut of doing the same things over and over again. Essentially, Tyler was his unconscious mind seeking out these deeply buried desires to be more open and to have more experiences. His personality starts to show this towards the end, and you can tell he's becoming more open. His conscientiousness is on a level is of medium to high, so his life was very routine-based and organized. Like I said with IKEA, he said he bought the same things as everyone else and described how happy he was in his life. And also his alternate personality, Tyler, when he created Project Mayhem, it was very well organized and time dependent. As far as extroversion goes, he was very low on this quality. He himself was not extroverted. You never see him with friends or family, and all his interactions with people are short and to the point. He spends most of his time by himself or with minimal interactions. For example, during the support groups, he only used this as a way to get his emotions out. When he described the people, it was always in a distasteful manner, and he usually kept to himself. For availability, this was also very low because he is very detached from his emotions or caring for really anyone or anything at all. For example, he was on the plane and he claims that he sometimes hoped that the plane would just crash and everyone would go with it. As far as neuroticism goes, this was on more the higher level, medium to high. He was very anxious about everything and his emotions were very uneven. And he always had a dampened mood about everything, especially when minor changes happened in his life. For example, in the support groups, he used this as a way to relieve his compounding and hidden emotions. And when Marla started going to the groups, um, he became irritable and uncomfortable, and he was very anxious, and he even imagined violently yelling at her to leave. So overall, the betrayal of dissociative identity disorder was, even though he hit all the symptoms that usually come along with it, it was very exaggerative. It took the scenario to a whole new level. Many people with dissociative identity disorder can actually have an awareness of the other personalities as more of a subset of their own. In most cases, they don't see hallucinations, but rather hear voices inside their heads. And they're aware of the other person's preferences, moods, attitudes, behaviors, and what they're capable of. This kind of, and the way this influences how we see people's psychological disorders is in a negative light, as if they're insane people who are on the verge of snapping and going insane and costing people their lives. This makes a negative stereotype of people with mental disorders, and this can cause them, people with the disorders, to become more insecure and less likely to talk about it. I'd like to leave you with a last note to wonder if we all have an inner Tyler Durden and are just too afraid of what we would lose in order to set it free. That's just something to think about. But I thank you for watching.